Hi, everyone. Welcome to Books with Friends, a part of Goddess Garden Book Chat. And I'm probably going to put this video in the private garden as well. One, because both of my channels are for mature audiences. I mean, let's be real, I don't read a lot of books that would appeal to the broad spectrum of youthful readers, but mostly because putting the things that I do in the private garden don't compare to this read. I don't think of this as 18 or over. The phenomenon of this book and this series and the films, I think, was blown way out of proportion. I grew up with Erica Kane taking me through more changes. So when we got to where we were in the journey of Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele, I just wasn't feeling the elevation. Considering we were in 2025, there was enough going on in literature for this to be a little more transcendent. So what we're going to talk about, because I know you know the names, is we're going to talk about book versus film, 50 Shades of Grey. We're going to talk about all of the books as a collective and the movies that supported, or so they were supposed to, support the books that were released by E.L. James. Um, I will not say that I didn't enjoy the books. Let me be clear. And I physically read them. These weren't audiobooks when I enjoyed 50 Shades of Grey. One, because there was a lot of backlash on who was selected to narrate on behalf of Anastasia. The internet was going crazy that they weren't feeling the voice that was being, the narration that was voicing the character. So I came to that discussion much later when I received the books. They were given to me by a friend because I was sort of laid up with knee surgery and they were like, you need something to read. I've got just a thing. And I got all three books. I read all three books back to back and then went back to book one and read all three books again. Not for the reasons most people would think, though. Before E.L. James ever released the series that was from Christian's perspective, I guess the first three books that I enjoyed were from Anna's perspective. How she didn't see what I saw stuns me as a character. If you don't know this by now, I'm into strong heroines when I listen to a story. I like for the heroines to be on it, smart, intuitive, capable, and able to take care of themselves. Victimization is not what I look for in a book. And the phenomenon um, of this series was just overwhelming. I was shocked. I mean, I thought it was, as a read would go, this is great fiction. I mean, it blew up big, like big, big. So the expectation for me in the film was that, wow, they're going to try and visually take me on this journey. I'm here for it because by the time the first movie had come out, we had Christian's perspective. Um, that's not what we got, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, first, want to set the stage that again, I'm going to go through this as I experience them. Anastasia's version first, and what I really want to talk about is both Anastasia's version and Christian's versions have absolutely nothing to do with the movie that I saw. No shade whatsoever to these fictional people that I'm about to really rag on because they don't exist, so I feel comfortable talking about them as characters. Is Anastasia Steele was the whiniest, most in, I don't even know what word I'm looking for, but she used to grain on my nerves. But the story that she was caught up in was fascinating. So I had to put up with her. And now I'm not even hearing this voice. I can't imagine that it would even be more irritating. But the voice of the character, oh my God, Christian, I don't understand. I've never done this before. Where are you taking me? Is this a helicopter? And you're saying to me, a educated, hopefully discerning reader, that here we have this man who has billions, who has savvy business intellect. He gets floored by a college student who trips and falls flat on her face into his office, considering the level of women he's been exposed to. Okay, no shade. I won't hold you. We're going to move past you like who you like. Not going to yuck your yum. If that's your deal, go crazy. As this relationship progresses, and I'm speaking strictly with the books, from Anna's perspective. As this relationship progresses, she knows that Christian is deeply flawed. She knows he's in therapy. She also knows that he was victimized as a child. Not the deep rooted layers of his victimization. You're seeing Christian try to deal with it, but he's not being honest with her about how flawed he is. Instead, he wants to substitute her, like he did others, for the way that he failed or the way he sees himself as a failure when it came to his mother. I I get the protective instinct so that you don't have to live the nightmare. But the character, Christian Grey, had so many red flags and warnings. His possessiveness, his inability to be touched, his clear, clean lines of not only will you be accessible to me, but you will allow me, and you will do so from the confines of this dwelling, from this period of time to this period of time. So that's all I can deal with because I don't want you to get sprung on this. And you're supposed to be okay with it. As a young college girl entering the world, no exposure to anything I'm about to introduce you to, let alone even if you had physical exposure, not to this degree, not to this level. And he expects her to fill a void of submission that he's had others fill. People who were experienced, people who understood the rules, the boundaries, and the give and take in a relationship like this. Then you meet his doctor. And part of what is exposed in this book is Christian understands his impact on the world, but he still loathes himself. That's where I got the word loach from as a part of my everyday vocabulary, because he would say this to himself, just loach, when he looked in the mirror, meaning, I disgust even me. It's just a face. Said that more than once. If you have gone on this journey, hopefully you have, because this is all about spoilers. I should have said that up front, but it is. It's going to be mad spoilers here because I have to have this frank conversation. I saw his physician more trying to make Christian comfortable in the skin he inhabited instead of trying to move Christian out of the skin he inhabited, because Christian was so resistant and he was still clinging to the pain of what he experienced as a child with his mom. Even though this was an extremely short period of time, it impacts him greatly to this day. And the more you go on this journey with him and this physician, you're understanding what his adoptive parents had to deal with, what his adoptive siblings had to deal with, because Christian didn't even use words to communicate for years when he became the ward of the doctor who took care of him. Raised in a loving family, people tried to reach and connect with him and make him whole again. And this is your new boyfriend. Okay, I'll give it to you. That's your deal. This is who you want to date. But her roommate was right. Her roommate was completely incensed as she became further entrenched in what she was seeing was an unequal dynamic. You are not equally yoked in this relationship. And this man is going to just take. He's going to do nothing but take from you. You progress further into this journey, and this is still, I'm only on book one. You progress further and you realize that she starts to allow herself to get submerged into his world to please him. And she has no idea what that means, even as she reads up on it, even as she pretends to understand. In the book, you go through that contract verbatim, what was put in front of her to understand, digest, and agree to in a time frame that he is pressing because he's already had access and now he wants more. He's seen you, he's befriended you, you're on the precipice of what he wants, but I need you to sign this first. So here she's got pushback. She's constantly trying to push back because she's still thinking in terms of, like most girls her age, most young women trying to emerge onto the scene of relationships. We're going to do relationship stuff. We're going to date. I'm going to be your girlfriend. I get it. You've had other girlfriends. Now it's me. And he's like, no, we're not doing none of that. I'm not here for none of that. What I need when I get off work on Thursday is for you to be there. If Thursday to Sunday, this is where you're going to be. And this is how you're going to dress. And this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to talk to me. This is how you're going to bow down for me. Okay. I honestly think I read that first book in a day. It was jaw dropping. The nerve of being this predatory, openly predatory as a character. So my thinking is there's going to be growth here. By the time we get from book one to book two, we're going to see Christian grow as a character. Because part of this journey and why I chose to talk about this is because I want to talk about character growth, sometimes the lack thereof. I know that the discussion has gone in full circle about this series. I get it. But books, like most things, aren't going anywhere once they're published and they're in the collective reservoir of what can be read. So I don't think this conversation should die down. I think it's on the cusp of three different things. You have the issue of being able to, at a young age, secure a man in your life that is completely out of your reach. And lately, in real life, we're seeing more and more young women secure men that in no way they are equally yoked in the relationship. And the dynamic gets toxic, then it gets legal, then it gets financial, and nobody wins, regardless of who walks away with what bag, what injury, what sentence. Nobody's winning here. Hurt people, and there's trauma in that journey. I don't care how you come out, there's trauma in that journey. And because we live in a day and age where the court of public opinion is equal as the legal justification and ramifications, it can carry on and affect members of your family, where you work, things like that. Okay, so this is how I'm looking at this first book. She has a ridiculous relationship with her mother. But it's ridiculous to me in the sense that she has an expectation that's never been realized. And then when she gets to the point where she needs her mother in her life to be both celebratory and close, that's not who she is to her. And I think it lends itself to why we have whiny Anastasia. Because then somebody needs to give me what I need, what I need. And oh, it was never ending in book one. And so that's how I felt about it. So the journey that I was hoping to take was a journey of character growth, one where I could see real change happen. Now let's talk about the movie because I want to paste them together so that we go on further. I'm not even throwing in Christian's versions yet. They they literally aren't even visible in the movie. The movie opens with two characters that are knowing when they meet they're not equally yoked. But the young lady, Anastasia Steele, in this movie is both curious and confident, but slightly trepidatious. She exudes a level of awareness where she's having a conversation about, I don't think this journey you want to take me on is really right for me. I don't think that this is something that we should be doing. I'm just not sure I'm there yet. And he's pushing for it. The other thing that I thought was interestingly bad as a choice, just bad as a choice, is you remove his relationship with his therapist. It does not exist in the film. So you don't have an understanding of how damaged Christian is. If this is all you're exposed to, you just think he's kind of controlling. You think that he has this kink fetish and he's found yet another person to play this role and he just wants to have a good time and live his best life and keep it pushing. So imagine coming off of book one and seeing this movie, or never seeing book one at all and seeing this movie. Anastasia and Christian are almost unrecognizable as characters. When you get to the point in the movie where Anastasia is openly challenging, openly curious, her submission has a certain um, churlish defiance to it. You've seen nothing of this character in this book. And so it wasn't that I thought the movie was bad. I thought it was disconnected from the story it was pulling from. I may be one of the few people who saw this movie or this series and thought it was perfectly cast. Everyone who inhabited the role that they did and brought those characters to life, working under the direction they received, did an amazing job. No shade to any of them. But I don't know who these people are. The only person that I would say remotely lived in the role that I saw in the book was Christian's mother. Because even Elena was slick and slippery and controlling. Because her overall goal and why she even went into business with Christian was to keep him tied to her, especially after her husband found out that she was downstairs grooming with a crop. And he decided, I don't want to be married to you anymore. She still bonded with Christian, built a business with Christian, met with him regularly, and knew everything that was happening in his life, trying to wait him out so that he could then come back under her control. If that wasn't glaringly clear to you, I don't know what book you read. But Elena was more predatory than Christian. And I think in that sense, Anastasia got that right. She knew exactly what Elena was about. And I think when I look at the character Christian's mother, who was kind of removed, kind of pulled back, still present, but she wasn't the kind in the story that she played a main role. She just tried to be as welcoming and nurturing as possible because she saw Christian thoroughly. She knew exactly how damaged he was. She knew what he had been through. She was clear on what he needed, and thank God for the doctor that was helping him. Um, and so when it was given to film, I loved how it was portrayed. I'm going to move on to the next set because this is probably going to be a 1 hour um, movie versus book versus film because God, I have so many issues with this. And I think it deserves a rewatch and it deserves for people, if you're going to look at this in any way, you're going to look at them as separate versions of the same story. Much like Wicked is divorced from The Wizard of Oz, which is a fever dream. So the continuation of characters makes absolutely no sense to me. What kind of drug was this? How hard was Dorothy hit on the head? But I digress. We're going to move on to book two because I think that's a good place for us to really delve into where the disconnection is. So, so we're on to book two. And in talking about book two, we're going to incorporate Christian's version and that journey where you get to see a balance in it's exactly what was happening. It follows the same timeline, but you get a peek inside what Christian was thinking, how he was seeing the situation and trying to control things. And especially in the fact that when they break up, when the book ends, when the movie ends and they break up, you don't get in the second release how well and thoroughly he stalked her because even though she had gone her own way, he was still communicating with her. He was still trying to send stuff to her. He was still running past her house, jogging on a regular basis. He was still monitoring what she was doing in her career, even so far as to do background checks of her coworkers. So when she decides to give him a window back in the second leg of this journey, you're looking at a thoroughly entrenched in control Christian Grey. He's still in therapy at this point of the journey, but you're not seeing growth because his control issues start to get ramped up. And it starts when she does give him the access and back into her life to go to her friend's art show. What happens at the art show and him seeing those images, he buys every single one of them. That it's in itself is a red flag. Before the event is over, in which they go to celebrate someone's achievements, he is making this purchase and whisking her out of there. And then he's trying to physically impose himself into her life so that he can mentally control her. And again, you're not seeing enough of the therapist. You're certainly not seeing the growth. And then you add in two side stalkers. Anastasia has a stalker and Christian has a stalker. Anastasia Stalker is someone in the sense that they want to abuse the position that she holds in the workplace and try and take advantage of her. He has a history of this kind of abuse toward coworkers. And in Christian's case, you have a stalker from a woman who, when their relationship ended contractually, didn't move on. She had some issues that she was dealing with that caused her to act out and reach into the past for comfort. And she knew she wasn't doing it the right way because her constant challenge was looking at what was happening in front of her that she didn't have access to. Now, I want to I want to talk about how great the soundtrack for movie 1 and movie 2 were. Um, if you got a chance to listen to the 50 Shades soundtrack, I hadn't listened to 3, but 1 and 2 had some amazing music. And you hear it in the film, it's very well placed. And you also see Anna, who is almost a fully fledged woman of strength and independence. Again, this is the difference between what's happening in the book and what's happening in the movie. In the book, she accepts that Christian is growing far more controlling, but he's also making concessions to keep her, giving her access to things and trying to find comfort in getting out of his shell so that he can continue to control her. Um, and so that she stays close to him. Um, it's an interesting lack of growth that I find fascinating with Christian's character in particular. We're going to ignore Anastasia, the enabler. When Christian has access to all of these tools, all of this love, all of these people that love to be a part of seeing him grow into a healthy relationship, he is still resorting to the same behaviors, keeping the same people around, and refusing to let go of the control aspects that he's introduced sexually. He even allowed the boundaries physically that he was sort of holding back on to let Anna in certain degrees. But even in that level of access, I never once in the books or the movie saw him tell her the entire story of what was happening in his life. At this point in the journey, I guess I was more fascinated with the way I was seeing these characters than I was in the story of a relationship growing into something. Because now you've introduced an element of danger. There are things that are happening around Anastasia that literally put her in danger. Then Christian winds up in a helicopter crash where he could have been killed. And this isn't necessarily connected to trying to keep them apart per se. He doesn't even realize that his nemesis goes way back to things he has long since forgotten. Excuse me. That was an interesting connection for me. I don't understand why it was woven in. I think there were other ways that that could have played out, but it is what it is. And that's where book 2 started to become a little distant from the journey I thought it would take. Um, and so I'm going to move straight into the third section of this because I'm going to be 100% honest. I did not watch the movie. I didn't like the wrap up of the journey of book 3 because she is fully consenting to being a part of his life. She's even inserted herself into his therapy growth. But again, there's never a conversation between these two characters that I witnessed or that was ever alluded to in the book journey that they'd had. When you read Christian's version and when you read her version, it all comes back down to trust. And he gets to the point where, because of the way that he viewed love, the way he was raised, he allowed himself to trust someone. And now you've taken my money. You acted like you cared about me. And if this is what you want, just take it and go. And he completely allows the stalker that is pressuring her to put him in a position to, for a minute, let this woman walk out the door. Now, think about what that says to the entire journey that they've been on. That it wasn't even a remote consideration for him, that she was manipulating him, and that clearly this had been happening the whole time, which I don't even understand how that's possible when you've been stalking her the entire time. You know what she's been doing, who she's been doing it with, and who's been in her life. She's practically living with you the way you stalk what's happening in her place. So when you get to the third leg of this journey, these are a married couple. I'm going to breeze past the sugar-coated entry into what is now marriage to Christian Grey. I don't even know how they got there, but it is what it is. She fancies herself fully in love with the man who was controlling and manipulating her to the point of buying the company she worked for when she wouldn't come and work for him. Okay. The one thing he asked that she willingly agreed to was that at the time, since they're a new couple, they're figuring it out, and he's trying on this new journey. He really wants to be invested in making this love work, but only between the two of them. No kids. What does Anna do? Anna gets pregnant. His reaction to it is so telling because of the fear he feels of who he can't be to this child. Again, wasn't a conversation, it was a reaction. So I don't know how it was handled in the movie because in the book, if I remember correctly, he cleans out the playroom and he's trying to make this transition and be this kind of loving husband. And when she puts the baby in play, he completely shuts down, and she doesn't know how to access this new husband of hers to have a real conversation about how they can move past this as a couple because it is what it is. You can't take it back. You can't expect to have this kind of access to me and we not procreate. That makes no sense. So by the time the story actually culminates into um, this manipulation tactic that her stalker did to her to access trying to hurt Christian, you're also dealing with the rest of the family now stepping up and playing a more important role. Her best friend marries Christian's brother, or I should say, gets engaged to. There is a home purchase, beautiful piece of property as descripted. World building was great, where it had this amazing look, a view over the sound. I guess that's what they call the river. I've never been there. It sounds gorgeous, but they buy this piece of beautiful property and they're going to raise their wonderful little family there, and it sort of arcs into him actually giving into this lifestyle, allowing himself to let go and be a part of a loving journey. And how ridiculous do you even think your audience is to accept that this is the way this story closes out? I don't for a second doubt that they would probably wind up together because they're toxic magnets to the same kinds of issues that their parents have made foundational to them. So I get it. They bounce off of each other. They certainly have a physical chemistry, but when you take a character through this kind of journey of manipulation and control, lies, deceit, and the way that he literally tries every way he can to be the person who makes all the decisions, and then fast forward me in book three to him being a whole human being and raising a child, I don't know how to process what it is you're trying to use as closure here. And I think that's the biggest struggle of this story. Christian as a character has no growth. It's a facade if you really measure how he behaved in the first two books. And then you look at who this character is in the third, and it just seems a little weirdly rushed and incomplete into a I'm all better now because I have a child and I have to be better because Anastasia told me so. She'd been telling you that since book one, and you kept Helena in your life. She's been telling you that since book one, and you've still been deeply entrenched in therapy, and she couldn't touch you. So I felt like doing this book versus film was necessary because no shade to the actors. I think they did a good job portraying what they were given. I don't even really dislike that those three movies exist in and of themselves as this entertaining journey toward two people finding their happily ever after. I get it. Calling it 50 Shades of Grey is weird to me because you're trying to tell me two bad narratives all rolled into one, neither one of which works for me. So I guess at the end of the day, I would love for us to have a discussion. I would love for this to be something that I hear about. If you felt that way when you went on this journey, was this something that really just had more questions than answers, especially when you left the book world and entered into the film world? How did that even make sense? And so, please, I'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe. Please like. I hope that this deep dive had some value. I'm glad I got it done because I had been mulling this over ever since I read it. And honestly, I know it was either 2016 or 2017 when I read these books. And then the phenomenon of 50 Shades was everywhere. And the conversations were based on the comments I was reading. Maybe some people were commenting in book reviews, things like that. But it was just a lack of character growth conversation that I never saw. And so this was my opportunity to have that conversation. I hope you'll join me again. There's so many more interesting things coming, and I want us to talk about them. I know that if you've seen the movie or if you've read the book, there's going to be some good stuff coming. So let me hear from you. And again, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.